if this is the first video of mine that you are watching, welcome to my channel, but if it is not, a welcome back. Today, as you can tell by the title, I am going to be talking about the Saint of Steel series by Kingfisher. I don't know if I have just been living under a rock, but I had not heard about this series until this year, and I so quickly devoured all 4 books that are out and available, and it is now one of my favorite series. So I really wanted to sit down and talk about this series, just in case there's anyone else who hasn't heard about it, because I found it to be such a comforting, cozy fantasy read that also felt incredibly immersive. These are the first books by Kingfisher that I have read. Usually they write horror, and that is not really my cup of tea. So I have seen so much praise online for Kingfisher, but just haven't felt drawn to anything in their bibliography like Nettle and Bone or the like, or What Moves the Dead is another really big one that's come out recently. But I haven't felt drawn to the summaries of those books until I stumbled across the summary for Paladin's Grace, which is the first book in the Saint of Steel series. And I didn't even read the entirety of the blurb. I believe the only line I read was just that Stephen, our male main character, was a paladin and his god died. And now he's just out in the world trying to get by as a paladin without a god. And that premise, that hook just immediately drew me in, and I needed to know more. And I think because I went into the series, into that book with such low to no expectations, because I really didn't know what the plot was, I was just going in for the vibes. It increased my enjoyment of the book because I discovered it was a fantasy romance series. And Stephen, our male main character, and Grace, our female main character, had the most hilarious, amazing meet cute in the first chapter or the second chapter that just immediately drew me in. It was hilarious. It was intriguing. It really just drew me in to this world, and I needed to know more about the politics, about the inner workings. I will say that I do kind of wish I had read the Clockwork Boys or the Clock Tower Wars duology, which takes place chronologically before the Saint of Steel series. So if you're looking to enter into this world and you want to read it chronologically, which is how Kingfisher recommends that you experience this world for the first time, you would begin with, I think it is the Clockwork Boys is the first book in that duology. But I came in at the first book of the Saint of Steel series, and I still absolutely enjoyed myself. I immediately went back to my library app and put holds on the second, third, and fourth book and read through them. I think I read each book within the space of a day, 2 days at most. And if you have read this series, you know that the third book ends on a massive cliffhanger that was kind of being hinted at from the very first book, but she ends it with a little line of dialogue that I remember I was reading the third book at like 2 or 3 in the morning in bed, and I physically sat up in bed and just made this little inhuman noise because I was so excited. And with the ending of the third book, I kind of had an idea as to where I thought the series was heading, but Kingfisher surprised and delighted me with the fourth book, which completely altered the trajectory that I thought the series was going to be going down. But to backtrack just a little bit back to the overarching story of this series, I would say that it is a cozy fantasy series, but I understand that not everyone would perhaps agree with that description because there is a little bit of gore, not quite gore, but there is murder and death that takes place, and there is the main plot of one book is basically this death trap that our characters are trying to escape. So it's a little bit more graphic, a little bit darker than perhaps your standard cozy fantasy that doesn't involve any murder or death or blood. However, I found the world to be really immersive and comforting. It is a queer normative fantasy, which I do find comforting almost always, and the characters are really endearing. Stephen, the protagonist, the paladin who we meet first, is just such a lovable human and so self-aware, almost to the point of being too self-aware. But I just found him hilarious and comforting, and same with Grace. Both of them have undergone their own personal traumas, so they kind of meet in this first book with hearts that are a little bit black and blue. They have reasons not to want to open their heart up to another person after being hurt in the past. And watching them be willing to take that risk while also coming to understand and accept that both of them are worthy of love. It was just a really heartwarming message in the first book. I will say that as the series progresses, it does feel as if the romance is decreasing ever so slightly. I would just say that the focus is being put more on the world building and the overarching world machinations rather than being very character focused. I felt the first book to be really focused on our characters of Stephen and Grace and learning a little bit about the side characters who would then take center stage in the later books. Whereas as we get farther into the series, there are bigger cogs that are turning in this world, and therefore more page space is being given to that world building to get us further along to the grand epic finale. I still enjoy the romantic partnerships that take place in each book, but I don't think there is a couple that has knocked Stephen and Grace out of that top spot for me. I just loved them so much. And as you might imagine with a fantasy romance series and just romance series in general, as the books progress, each book has a different main couple at its heart. So there are 7 books planned in this series, and there are 7 paladins. Therefore, it makes sense that each paladin is getting their own book, and we get to follow along with them and learn more about them. And I believe each one is getting their own romantic partner. But things took place in the 4th book that I was not expecting. I don't know if I've already said this, but the books were initially self-published. Kingfisher self-published them. However, the rights were picked up by a traditional publisher. I believe it was Orbit in the UK at the very least. So they were picked out late last year in the fall, and I haven't been able to find anything out if the remaining 3 books in the series are also going to be picked up and traditionally published, but I imagine that they would be. The first 4 books are also being re-released next spring, so spring 2025, and the covers are being redesigned. I don't own any physical copies of this series, and I've been on the fence as to whether I want to invest in these covers, the current existing covers, or if I want to wait until the re-releases, so then I have a series that entirely matches books 1 through 7. Regardless of what editions I decide to buy, I do know that 100% this is a series that I want on my bookshelves, and it does really bug me when books don't match in a series, so I'm probably gonna wait and then get the new cover releases, even though I absolutely adore these original covers that Kingfisher self-published with. Like I said, the lens has shifted a little bit from the romance to the fantasy, but even from back at book 1, Kingfisher did an incredible job with foreshadowing some of these larger events that were gonna take place. And she also did an incredible job at not going too big too quickly. So like I said, there's 7 paladins, but in the first book, we really only meet Stephen and maybe 2 or 3 others. And then in the next book, one of the main supporting characters, it's his book, Ishtavan. And then we meet the other characters and like one new one. And each book, at least so far, in each book, that circle has widened a little bit more. Obviously, Kingfisher talks about all the paladins in each book, but in terms of them appearing on the page, they do really limit it to just 3 or 4 paladins so that the focus can be on those characters, and then the circle just keeps getting a little bit bigger, the lens keeps getting a little bit larger with each new book. And I really liked the subtle way that Kingfisher handled their character development. Because these paladins are like family to one another, the way that they interact and behave with other paladins is very, very different compared to the way that they interact with, say, their love interest or people outside of their circle. And I think that's just a really subtle way at showing character growth, character development, and just a really good depth of character. Stephen interacts really differently with Istvan than he does with Grace. And subsequently, Istvan interacts really differently with Stephen than he does when he's off on his own, leading his own little mission and meeting new people. And I really liked that subtle nuance and depth of character. I think Kingfisher did an incredible job on that front. And it allowed Kingfisher to delve into their own quirks and insecurities and just the differences in their personalities, which allowed them as individuals to really shine through when they took center stage in their own book. And I just found that to be a really great way to tackle a larger cast of characters over a mid-length series at 7 books, and makes me so excited to learn more about the paladins that we haven't really had a chance to meet just yet. Kingfisher has kept me wanting more at the end of each book, and I am just so excited for book 5 whenever it does come out, whether it is next year, hopefully in the spring, or even if it is next fall at the end of 2025. I don't want to reveal too much about the plot because I don't want to spoil anything, but also I found my enjoyment to be heightened because I went into this series and into Paladin's Grace not really knowing what to expect. But in that first book, there is a murder mystery that our paladins are trying to solve. There is romance between Stephen and Grace, and this is an adult fantasy romance. So there are explicit scenes on the page. So we have mystery, we have romance, we have banter, we have tension between our characters, a little bit of will they, won't they, and I found this to just be a really compelling, larger world. It was incredibly entertaining. I loved all of the characters that I have met so far, and I really want to go back and read the Clock Tower Wars series now, the duology. And there's also a standalone Sword Heart, which takes place in this same world. There are very minor spoilers for those 3 previous books chronologically in the 3rd and 4th book of this series, I believe, just a few subtle mentions. So if you've read those books before, it's just a little Easter egg for you to find in the later half of the Saint of Steel series. But I think that is all the praise that I have to give this series, at least right now. If you've read these books, please let me know down below because I would love to chat with you about these books. I just love this characters. I want to hear the theories of where we think Kingfisher is going to go because, like I said, I thought I knew at the end of book 3 where things were going to go, and then book 4 just completely knocked me off my feet and changed the trajectory that I was thinking these books were going to go down. But for now, that is it. Those are my thoughts and mainly just my praise and delight about the Saint of Steel series by T. Kingfisher. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will be back soon with a new one. Bye for now.